G'day guys, welcome to the Woodford SSC 4th podcast. I'm at my house again on a terrible cold day in Melbourne. It's actually raining outside at the moment. Typical Melbourne weather. You get 4 seasons in one day, so no wonder everyone gets sick here. Your immune system's all over the place. You don't know if it's hot, if it's cold. Anyway, going back to my third podcast, I got a fair bit of feedback from it. A lot of people ask me a lot of questions about it. I got a lot of PMs, emails from a lot of young kids in exercise science. Once again, thank you very much for the kind words. It's just very humbling to hear a lot of young kids talk about me that way, and to say that I'm a role model. I really appreciate it, and that's something I'm taking on board. It's something I'm coming to grips with, that I'm going to try to be a role model for you kids. And try and show you that there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and if you really want to, you can create a business like I have, but it comes through hard work and dedication. Now, I think I got a bit ahead of myself in the last podcast where I said I think my business is the best in Australia, and I had a few emails about that. That is not degrading any other business in Australia. There are very good strength and conditioning facilities in Australia. All I'm saying is, I am myself personally, I'm trying to push strength and conditioning mainstream. The big issue is there's no big personalities. Now, my personality, and as you guys can tell, I'm very driven, I'm very passionate. And I just don't think there's a lot of guys out there, a lot of the PhDs, a lot of these guys, they're just happy to sit back. And that's fair enough and just do research, but they're not pushing the industry. They're not pushing evidence-based strength and conditioning. So I believe with my personality, and obviously I'm a bit out there, I've got that personality where I can push it mainstream, and that's what I'm trying to do. And with my business, I honestly, truly believe in the next 5 to 10 years, my business will be one of the main models in Australia that we can model off, and that's just me believing in my model. And that's not to say there aren't any other good strength and conditioning coaches or performance centers out there. There are. So don't get me wrong. I didn't mean to come across like that. And if you did think that, I'm very sorry. I'm not here to disrespect anyone in strength and conditioning. I'm trying to elicit change, and this is the only way I know how, because I was just sick to death of sitting on the status quo. Sick to death of people like guys like CrossFit doing a 2-week course and they know everything. Guys with a degree not getting work. I mean, the amount of guys that I know who have an undergrad in exercise science, masters in sports science, and not have a job or be working as a sales rep is unbelievable, and it's not right. So for me, I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing and keep pushing this forward and keep pushing strength and conditioning as a career. I mean, you do a physiotherapy degree, you become a physio. You do an accountant's degree, you become an accountant. Do an exercise science degree, what do you become? That's the whole issue. So that's why I am the reason why I'm like. Today for the 4th topic, brings me on to one of my main areas of interest, which is neuromuscular strength development. Strength is a term that's so misunderstood in just any gym. Strength is so misunderstood. I'm talking strength, even in some athlete populations. A lot of, especially in Australia, we don't understand strength as well as we think we do. When I went to America and Maryland, I really saw the difference in how important strength level is. Yes, their mainstream sport is gridiron, and it has a different physiological demand. Obviously, it's more anaerobic compared to AFL football, which is a combination of anaerobic. But just the emphasis they place on strength and power development, or some form of athletic development, like
running mechanics, agility, strength and power, injury prevention, compared to what we do, it was a big wake-up call. And obviously, I've worked in Australia a fair bit, and I've worked in America now. Just the difference was huge. So I just think strength is just, and when I talk strength, I talk max force or peak force. It's just a real misunderstood subject. So today, the next 15 minutes, it's very, I could go on for probably about 3 hours on this subject. I could just spitball. Everything I do in these podcasts, I don't plan. I just literally, if you talk to my staff, I just literally go ad hoc. Everything I do, obviously with programming, I plan everything for my athletes. But everything I do on these podcasts that you guys see, it's just ad hoc. It's just off my head. What I feel at the time and what I feel like I should be saying. So I am who I am. I call a spade, and I think that's why people
will either like me or hate me, and up to you what you judge. So in terms of strength, that's what I'll talk about today. It's only 15 minutes. I'm going to go over the basics of how to develop strength, how to maximally stimulate your CNS to maximize peak force, max force output, your loading parameters, so your volumes, your intensities, your frequencies, your rest periods, your exercise selections, your tempos, etc. I'll go over that very, very quickly to define strength and how we can develop strength and then transfer it over to the athletic environment for athletic performance. And remember, that's the biggest thing that we do, especially in my company, for the athletes that we train. We're looking for transference. And when I say transference, we're looking to make that athlete better at their sport. So for me, improve their ability to perform the skill and allow them to reach their physical potential. Because everyone's got a physical cap, a genetic ceiling on how far their strength gains can go. Okay? And that comes down to genetics. Genetics plays a massive role. And that, in terms of fiber type composition, your slow twitch, your fast twitch, I mean, that's once again, that's not really my area, that's genetics, but that plays a massive role. And you see what happens is, it's interesting to see because there's something called plasticity, and plasticity is the ability of the body to adapt to a certain stimulus of stress. So if you train cardiovascular aerobic loads, you do a high amount of aerobic running, endurance running, your tissues, your type 1, your oxidative fibers will develop, so you're going to become more slow twitch dominant. Now, if you train more strength, power, speed, you do more max effort, more jumping, more bounding work, more max stimulating your CNS, you're going to develop those fast twitch fibers. So you're going to improve your anaerobic capacities, your anaerobic performance capacities. So you're going to become more athletic in that way. So I think when you're younger, what happens is, especially when those you've got some hybrid fibers that, depending on the stress you place on them, will develop into either slow twitch or fast twitch. When you're younger, the big issue in Australia is you play football and these kids get told for performance you should run long, slow distance running around a track for 10 kilometres. And that's a big fallacy. I mean, the biggest thing about Australia is, compared to America, which I saw, so as I said, I went to America and worked in the college system, was just, in Australia, to get fit, the whole fallacy is you've got to run. You've got to do cardiovascular aerobic work. You've got to run 10 kilometres, and that's a sign of being fit. Where it's the opposite to me, I think that you should develop your strength. Strength is the most basic biomotor quality that you can develop. It's the most basic physical quality that everyone needs, be it an athlete, be it a general population. Strength facilitates all other athletic attributes or fitness qualities. And when I talk about that, I talk power, speed, agility, and even endurance, work capacity. You improve your strength, you can improve your aerobic capacity in lower aerobically trained individuals or individuals with a lower VO2 max. You improve your max strength, you can increase your work capacity as well. So the whole notion about going to a gym, and the first thing everyone ever thinks of, no matter, and this is especially for women out there, first thing you guys think of is to get fit, you've got to run. And you've got to run long, slow distance. So you have to run 10, 20, 30 Ks. No good. Big thing about my company is changing fallacies. Strength is the main thing you need to develop. Don't be running long, slow distance. If you are going to run long, slow, if you are going to do some sort of conditioning work, and we're not talking cardio work, everyone calls it cardio, we call it conditioning. And it's conditioning of what we like to call your metabolic pathways. So you've got 3 pathways in your body, and they don't work independently. There's some crossover between. So one comes on, one comes off. So there's some crossover between the 3. You've got 2 anaerobic, your ATP, PC, and your anaerobic glycolysis, and your third one, which is your aerobic, which relies on oxygen, which is obviously your aerobic system. And all 3 of them, they work together, and depending on the intensity, duration, will dictate which is the main pathway you use. So if you're running for 10 kilometres, you're developing your cardiovascular system, you're developing your aerobic system. And that's in Australia, that's what everyone thinks you should do, that type of training mode to get fit. Opposite end of the continuum, the big issue in Australia is people think that you lift weights and you're going to get big, you're going to look like a bodybuilder, where it's the opposite. You're not going to look like a bodybuilder, you're going to get stronger, you're going to get leaner, because the more lean, because you're stimulating, where you're upregulating a certain gene to stimulate protein synthesis. So think about when you lift weights, you're stimulating your chains in your muscle tissue, and you're telling your tissues to grow and increase in size. We call it muscle hypertrophy. We're increasing size. more lean muscle mass you have on your body out there, the higher metabolic rate. Metabolic rate is how quickly you expend energy, how quickly you're turning over energy for movement. If you've got more lean muscle mass, you've got a higher metabolic rate, you're going to burn more calories, you're going to burn less fat, you're going to look better overall. If you're doing aerobic work, you're actually going to do the opposite. You're going to increase what we call a stress hormone called cortisol. Now, cortisol is a stress hormone, and it's released in when you do heaps of aerobic work, or if your carbohydrate stores are very low and you're doing high intensity repeat effort work, and it's going to eat into your muscle tissue. So what you're actually doing is you're decreasing the amount of muscle you got on your body. So you're actually slowing down your metabolism. So for anyone out there who wants to change their body composition, who wants to look better, lifting weights is a better option than running long, slow distance. And it's for another article I'll talk about HIIT, high intensity interval training. That's a better way of doing conditioning than it is doing long, slow distance cardiovascular work. And that's probably that'll be for another podcast that I'll talk about how you can best upregulate what we call an EPOC response. EPOC is excess post-exercise oxygen consumption. And what that is, that's the body returning, the cardiovascular system returning the body back to homeostasis after maximal effort. And we want that to be raised. So what we found with EPOC is, after resistance training, it's actually raised up to 24 to 48 hours post-lift. So you're burning calories for a lot longer compared to aerobic work. Also with resistance training, you're actually increasing your lean body mass, which is really important because that's going to decrease your body fat and you're obviously going to look and feel a lot better. Also, not to mention, you're going to develop your nervous system. That can be for another topic though. Just quickly, strength. So I kind of went off topic there, sorry. Strength. How do we define it? So strength, in my opinion, strength is the ability of the nervous system to produce a force. That's very important to understand. It's a neurological quality. Meaning, you need to understand how to develop your nervous system to maximally upregulate force. Okay, too many people think strength is training 3 sets of 10 on every muscle group with no progression. That's not developing strength. Before I start on this, remember this. Everything comes back to the individual's training age. Example, if I get a novice at my performance center and he's never lifted before, never been in a high performance program before, I literally can get him to squat with the bar or deadlift with the bar with good technique and getting him to drive for the weight, and he'll get stronger like that because his window of improvement is quite large. So if you're out there and you're a novice and you never lifted weights before, you will get stronger quicker, and you'll see it within your gains. What you'll notice is you go, well, my bench press on my squat went up 20 kilos in 2 weeks. How did that happen? It's because your body's adapting. The first 4 to 6 weeks of a novice undertaking a strength training program, there's a motor learning skill acquisition or a neuroadaptation phase where your nervous system becomes more efficient at activating and deactivating motor units and firing motor units in that fashion. Remember, specificity. Adaptation is very specific to the muscle group used, the motor pattern, the joint angle, the contraction type, the contraction velocity, the posture. Everything is specific. So specificity is the key. So if you want to get better at squatting, squat. If you want to get better at deadlifting, deadlift. Okay, and those two movements, even though they don't resemble any motor skill in sport, they're the ones that are closest to the sport-specific movements in most field-based sports. So you want to use them. In everything we do, we want transference, but we never want to load the skill in the gym. Okay, you do enough sport-specific training on the training track. All we try and do is develop strength in the gym so we can transfer it and complement the skill. So they're stronger, bigger, faster at executing the skill. So strength, it's a neural quality. Big thing about the nervous system is you need to understand how to recruit motor units. Motor units are the most simplest functional unit of the nervous system. And I'll just quickly go over the nervous system. The nervous system is split up to a few parts, mainly 2 main parts. Your CNS and your peripheral nervous system. Okay, so your central nervous system, pretty much your brain and your spinal cord. And your peripheral nervous system is anything outside your brain and your spinal cord. Okay, so you've got your efferent pathways, your motor pathways, and your sensory afferent pathways. Okay, and they relay, your brain drives and controls skeletal muscle contraction. Okay, so your brain recruits motor units, which recruits muscle fibers. The muscle doesn't recruit the brain. Always remember that. Now, I got Best example I got was from my supervisor, Dr. Alan Pierce, in my honours. And he said, the nervous system's really misunderstood. A lot of people, it's the final frontier. Physiology's done to death. The nervous system, there's not many people who do it. And that's why I picked it, because it's in terms of performance, strength, power, speed, agility, it's an anaerobic neuromuscular quality. You need to understand the nervous system and how to maximally stimulate it to develop those athlete qualities. So that's why I did it. Alan said to me, think about this, without the nervous system, we're just slabs of meat. Really, we can't move. So we need the nervous system to make muscle move. And that's why it's so important. Motor units. Motor units are the simplest functional unit of the nervous system. They're a neuron, a nerve cell, and the muscle fiber they innervate. It's really important you understand that. Think of it this way. More motor units, more force. So my job is to get the athlete to recruit as many motor units as possible. Now, when a novice comes to me, they cannot fully activate a muscle. Why, you may ask? Because they're untrained. We need to teach their nervous system to tap into more of their motor units. Once again, a motor unit is a neuron, a nerve cell, and the muscle fiber it innervates. Okay? Now, motor units are dictated, motor unit recruitment is dictated by what we call Headman's size principle, meaning motor units are recruited depending on their size. It's recruited in a systematic fashion. Small, slow firing, low threshold, to large, high threshold, fast firing. So what happens is those small, slow firing, low threshold ones, which are linked, that neural pathway is linked to the slow twitch muscle fibers, they're recruited first. As more force is needed, those large, fast-firing, high-threshold motor units are recruited last. And those motor units are the ones that recruit high amount of force, high amount of power. So it makes sense, as an athlete, as a performance coach out there, you'd want to recruit those high-threshold, fast-twitch motor units, because they're the ones that produce high amounts of power, high amounts of force. It's really important you guys out there understand the size principle, because a lot of people get it wrong. In Australia, we've got this whole notion of the bodybuilding community is, the fitness community is stuck back in the 70s with the bodybuilding community. It hasn't developed at all. And it's stuck back in this chest tries, back buys, and splitting programs. In my opinion, you shouldn't split programs. Unless you're a highly trained bodybuilder who's had 10 years, maybe 5 to 10 years experience, who needs to increase lagging muscle groups, you don't need to do that type of training. For a novice, for an athlete, for anyone who's just general population, just wants to improve his function, just look better, you should train your body as a unit. Train movements, not muscle groups. And that's a big issue, because what they're teaching in these courses is they're teaching you to train individuals like bodybuilders, and it doesn't work. It's not time effective, and you're pretty much, the results you'll get will be suboptimal, and you're wasting your time. You're paying someone $80 to teach you to bicep curl or tricep extend or leg curl. That's useless. They're not task complexity exercise. They're not going to challenge your nervous system, and you don't need someone to watch you for that. You should be paying a personal trainer to coach you on those main basic core compound lifts. Squats, deadlifts, and their derivatives. And if you can, clean snatches and jerks. I don't think general population need that. I just think they just need to work on your basic squats and deadlifts. And at my company, I'll go through in the next few weeks what exercises we use in terms of our derivatives, our squats and deadlifts to really stimulate your CNS and maintain overload. But they're the two main ones you want. A big thing about developing strength is you should focus on your compound core movements, exactly the ones I just said before, squats and deadlifts. Why, you may ask? Because you're training your body in a coordinated fashion. You're training your body as a unit. So what you're doing is, in terms of your CNS, which is up here in your frontal lobe, which sits right here, you've got something called your M1. And your M1 is your primary motor cortex. And that's what drives these neurological impulses. It's called EC coupling, excitation contraction coupling. Okay, and what that does is, it's called spreader action potential, shortening of sarcomeres. So the brain, your M1, your primary motor cortex, sends a message down this neurological pathway to this junction called this neuromuscular junction, and what it does is it has to reach a certain threshold before this motor unit can be fired. If it doesn't reach this threshold, it can't be fired and the muscle can't be recruited. Okay, so that's a big thing. So you may ask, well, how do you best stimulate and activate those high threshold fast twitch motor units? Very good question. Brings me on to the next topic. Best way to recruit them, especially for strength development, is lifting heavy loads for lower reps. So when I talk heavy loads, I talk heavy squats, heavy deadlifts, anything in between the bracket of 1 to 4 to 5 RM, heavy squats, and that's how you tap in them. You can tap in them 3 ways, these high threshold motor units. Lifting heavy loads, low reps, long recoveries, sub-maximal loads, light loads, lifted explosively or ballistically. So lifting it as literally as fast as you can. Or 3, which is the worst way of doing it, is lifting sub-maximal loads to failure. Now, there's a huge issue with this. When you're lifting sub-maximal loads to failure, at some point you will tap in those fast twitch fibers, high threshold motor units, but what you've got to remember about them is they're fast fatiguable. Yes, they produce high amounts of force, high amounts of power, but they fatigue quicker than all the other motor units. Those slow twitch motor units, they're non-fatiguable. Your body can produce force for prolonged periods of time with them. With those fast twitch motor units, they fatigue quickly. So when you train to fatigue all the time like a bodybuilder or a CrossFitter, you're not actually tapping into those motor units anymore. They're not reaching that threshold that I was teaching you guys about. They're not reaching that depolarization threshold that the nervous system needs to activate it and fire that motor unit. They're not reaching it anymore. So what happens is, if you're training failure, or you're training like a CrossFitter, you're training strength endurance, you're developing your slow twitch oxidative fibers, or you're training your nervous system, your promotor cortex, to fire motor units slower. So you're actually getting slower in the long term, you're not getting quicker. And that's the big issue that I have with CrossFit is they say they train different biomotor qualities when they don't. They train metabolic capacity, they train strength endurance, and they train like a bodybuilder because they train sub-maximal loads to failure. That's not developing strength. Strength is, once again, heavy load, slow velocity training with intention to move the weight quickly. And that's a big point. Intention should be always to move the weight quickly. Regardless of the weight you have on the bar, you should be trying to move that weight as quick as you can. So in terms of lifting heavy loads, if you're lifting in between 1 to 4 to 5 RM, that's a heavy load. That's high neural, high muscular load. You're maximally stimulating your CNS and you're recruiting as many motor units as possible. So you're increasing max strength or peak force, and that's what you want. With strength, it's all about quality, not quantity. A big issue that I have about most gyms and most trainers in general is they train this, they've got this whole notion of if 4 sets is good, 10 must be better. It's the opposite with the nervous system. What I truly believe in the literature that I believe, which I've read, is with the nervous system needs constant stimulation from repetition, variety, and a constant challenge. Remember, adaptation is volume specific. I do agree. Neural, metabolic, motor learning skill acquisition. So you've got to teach your nervous system how to recruit those motor units in that fashion, but then you've got to load it and add that load to get stronger. I mean, as I said, going back to the novice example is, you can just teach them with the bar and their window's quite large and they can adapt very quickly. They can get stronger within the first 3 to 4 weeks and they adapt quite quickly. If you're a highly trained individual with over, say, 2 to 3 years experience, your window adaptation might be that. So you need really high training interventions to really stimulate change and increase your strength. In terms of the best, as I said, the best exercises to select, stick to your core compound lifts, your bilateral lifts. Okay, by doing that, they're the ones that have what we call high task complexity. Now, high task complexity is something that's really going to challenge your nervous system. For you guys out there, what do you guys think? What would be, in terms of task complexity, what would be higher in task complexity? A bicep curl or a squat? Makes sense it would be a squat, wouldn't it? Because it's a compound, it's a multi-joint movement. Your nervous system has to coordinate multiple joint actions and multiple muscle groups to activate and deactivate to produce the movement. So it's going to stress your nervous system out more. You're going to recruit a lot of muscle tissue, you can expend a lot of calories, and you're going to have a high EPOC response post-training. So it works either way. You're going to increase your strength, you're going to increase your lean body mass, and you're going to decrease body fat. And that's what you want as an athlete, and that's what you want as general population. So it makes sense to do that. in terms of the factors of strength, remember there's always two factors of strength, and here's a big one for anyone out there. People go to the gyms and they see a real massive guy, huge bodybuilder guy, and they go, well, he must be strong. Not in all cases. There's two types of hypertrophy, sarcoplasmic and myofibrillar. Sarcoplasmic is increase the size of muscle without increasing the force generating capacity. Myofibrillar hypertrophy is increasing cross-section area while increasing the force generating capacity. Now for an athlete, we want functional tissue. Okay, we want contractile tissue. A sarcomere is a force generating unit of the muscular system. We want to create more contractile proteins. More contractile proteins, more sarcomeres that we can get the nervous system to activate, the greater force, the more stronger, the more powerful you are. Going back to the first thing I said, strength is a foundation of every athletic quality. If you increase your strength, you increase your speed, power, agility, work capacity, potential. So if you want to jump higher, run quicker, change direction better, throw better, get your strength up. Strength is a foundation for everything. Okay, and that's the most important thing, which I keep going back to. Strength. I place such an emphasis on strength. Standing on a BOSU ball and doing some sort of balance training ain't going to help your strength. It's not going to help you when you've got a 300 kilo, 200 kilo guy running at you, and you've got to be able to hold, and you've got to be able to accept that blow, and you've got to have the body armor to be able to accept it and then push back. So that ain't going to help you. So especially for rugby players, for gridiron players, for even football players, it's a collision sport. You need to have body armor. You've got to be strong through your hips, knees, and ankles. You've got to be strong through your post chain. You've got to be strong through your core. So that's why squats and deadlifts are so important. So in terms of your two types of hypertrophy, in terms of athletes, you need that myofibrillar hypertrophy. Okay? But people go to the gym and they see this massive bodybuilder. What this bodybuilder actually has got, he's got heaps of fluid retention. And it's through sarcoplasmic hypertrophy, so increasing fluid retention to the sarcoplasm, increasing fluid retention. So they get heaps of fluid, and it's non-functional contractile tissue. So if you got them to, say, squat or deadlift, in most instances you could get a 80-kilo guy who's neurally strong, and he can tap into more motor units. So in terms of his nervous system's a lot more efficient at activating motor units, so he can tap into more muscle fibers compared to the bodybuilder who maybe can only tap into 60-70% of his motor units during a deadlift or a squat, and he weighs 120 kilos. The 80-kilo guy will win every time because he's a lot functionally stronger and his nervous system's a lot more efficient. So that's something I want you guys to understand. Looks don't always mean strength. Okay, and I want people to start understanding that is just because a guy looks a certain way doesn't make him strong, doesn't make him powerful. In most instances, most guys have trained their nervous system to fire slower. You need to train your nervous system to fire quicker, and you do that through max strength training, and you do that through ballistic, explosive power training, through plyometrics, through Olympic lifting, through dynamic effort work, through maximal effort sprints. And that's for another topic. So in terms of the two factors of strength, there's two factors. One, the volume of the muscle. So when I say it's neuromuscular, there's a neural component and there's a muscular component. In terms of there's two factors. The size of the muscle, everything being equal, will dictate the force generating capacity. Okay, but as I said, there's two types of hypertrophy which people don't understand. And number two, the extent which the nervous system can activate it. So once again, how important strength is in terms of neural quality, and you guys to understand that, I can't express. It's really important to understand how to develop strength as a neural quality. In terms of the adaptations you're going to get in terms of the neuromuscular system or the corticospinal tract is, you're going to get increase in motor unit recruitment, increased firing rate, increased firing frequency of motor units, increased neural drive, decrease antagonist co-activation. So this is any sports exercise science students out there, anyone who understands what I'm actually saying. Pretty much what happens is when you do a lift, your nervous system gets a lot more efficient at activating motor units, activating more motor units, increasing the amount of neural impulse, the frequency of neural impulses that it fires from the promotor cortex, and increase that neural drive strength from the M1. So you're going to recruit a lot more motor units at a quicker rate for longer. What also it does is the nervous system wants to be real efficient. So it's actually going to activate the prime mover and deactivate the antagonist, the opposite muscle group to the prime mover, to make the movement more efficient. The nervous system wants to be the most efficient. It wants to be as efficient as possible. It doesn't want to expend calories. So what will happen after a while, that's why your body adapts and adapts to stress. Because the nervous system just wants to get more efficient. And that's the thing about the nervous system. It always wants to be as efficient as possible. Okay, and that's what happens and what you start to see. And that's why it's so important you induce overload and you provide a new stress to your CNS once every 2 to 3 weeks, especially if you're highly trained, because your CNS will adapt quite quickly when you're highly trained. And if you don't give it a new stress in terms of your loading parameters, your volumes, your intensities, your frequencies, and your rest periods, you're never going to induce overload. You're never going to get stronger. You're never going to increase in performance capacities. And that's one thing about my job, is to provide a stimulus to what the body's not normally used to, allow rest and recovery. And that's how we get stronger. That's how we increase in performance capacities. In terms of your rest periods and what you need to know about your rest periods, it's a big thing. People ask me all the time, what rest period should you have? What tempo should you think about? Okay, there's a few factors I'll go. Rest periods. Got to know limitations. Limitations are a big thing. Okay, I might have 15, 20 athletes, and I might have them for 2 hours for a week. I need to be time effective. I need to select exercises that are going to give bang for my buck. So I'm going to select exercises that have high task complexity, but exercises that need to be coached, not bench press, not curls, not all that crap. Clean, squats, deadlifts. They're the ones that need to be coachable. Okay. You need to remember, not everything's perfect in this world. You're going to have time limitations. So what I think with max strength stuff, it's a high neural load. What I like to give is normally between 3 to 4 minutes rest. If they're doing a 1 to 2 RM, I'll probably give 4 minutes. If they're anywhere between 3 to 5, I'll give them 3 minutes rest. And the reason why we do that is we need full neuromuscular recovery. If you don't allow, if you're doing it with suboptimal recovery or impartial recovery, and you're not allowing your ATP PC system to fully resynthesize, what will happen is you're training glycolysis, so you've got some sort of accumulated fatigue, which is terrible. Fatigue is a terrible environment for strength and power. Never ever train max effort lifts under fatigue. It doesn't work. 1, your technique's going to break down and you're going to create poor motor patterns, but 2, chance injury goes up because your body can't handle that load and you're going to compensate with other muscle groups to get the movement up. It's terrible. Don't do it. So normally 3 to 4 minutes is to allow full neuromuscular recovery. If you don't, and you fire motor unit, it won't reach threshold, you won't recruit the motor unit, you won't recruit the muscle tissue, you won't produce the force. Now that's really important to understand. Okay, so normally 3 to 4 minutes rest is really vital. Allow full recovery. Don't train under fatigue. In terms of your tempo, that was something that I went over in my honours. If you guys have read about my honours was on neurological adaptation underpinning strength improvements following slow and fast velocity leg strength training. And pretty much, in short, what we found was by slowing down heavy load, slow velocity leg strength training, it increases task complexity on the nervous system and evokes overload and increases strength capacities. So it increases sensory inputs, challenges the nervous system, your body gets stronger, you recruit more high threshold motor units. So what I say to my guys is, say example for a squat, I always put a tempo in their head. So what I say is I want you to think 2 seconds down, half a second hold at that parallel, explode up as hard as you can. And the reason why I get them to do that is because I get them to think about the movement. Now, a big issue that I have is kids, especially novices, come to see me and my company and they've got poor motor control, they can't recruit their glutes, they're very quad dominant, they're very tight through their calves. They're the main things I see. They've got no motor development, they've got no CNS development, they've never been in a high performance program. I see it all the time, 99.95% of the time with most young kids, and I'm talking TSC Cup players, VFL players. These are high-level players, good players. They don't do any form of athlete development. And it's really terrible to see because if all they need to do is some form of running mechanics, some form of strength and power development, and they'll become a better football player out of sight. But they don't see that. All they think about is running. They do enough of it. They need to start thinking long term. They need to start injury prevention. They need to start thinking performance capacities. Okay, so a young kid comes in, first thing I want them to do is really think about the movement, because they've never really challenged the nervous system, they've never learned that pattern. It's all motor learning skill acquisition phase. So what I do is I get them to think about the movement, number one, but I get them to put a tempo on it. So with the squat, it's 2 seconds down, half a second hold, explode up, 1 second restart. If they do that, what kind of happens is you create a mind-muscle connection and you strengthen that connection between your nervous and muscular systems. Okay, by doing that, you get a lot stronger, you improve your strength out of sight because you're challenging up here. And once again, guys, all strength comes from is up here. Okay, and that's really important. So I get them to really think about that movement and it creates task complexity and they get strong out of sight. So what I want you guys to start thinking about when you go to the gym, don't go through the motions. Think about the movement, place a tempo on the movement and really work on controlling the negative, driving to the positive. And the reason why, think about it this way, the reason why we get our athletes to explode through the shortening phase, the maximum shortening velocity, or the concentric phase of lift, and the concentric phase is when the muscle shortens, the eccentric phase is when the muscle lengthens. Think about this, in a game of sport, when the muscle shortens and concentrically contracts, the athlete accelerates. So it makes sense to place a specific velocity stimulus upon the player. So when the player overcomes the weight, we get them to explode out. And what will happen is, there's two factors in that. They'll increase motor unit recruitment, but it will enhance the training effects. So you're going to stimulate your nervous system to a greater degree. You get two times greater motor unit recruitment during a ballistic explosive movement than you do a slow velocity movement. So what I say to my guys is, intention to move the weight quickly, but also actual movement velocity is really important. So I could put 200 kilos on the bar for a squat, and the actual movement speed might be slow, but the athlete's intention is to move the weight quickly, and that's going to increase neural stimulation and neural drive, and that's going to increase fast twitch, high threshold motor unit recruitment. And that's what we want. Developing high threshold motor unit recruitment, fast twitch fiber development, athlete development. So that's a really important thing. Always drive to the positive phase. Okay, so in a game when they accelerate, you always want to emphasize movement speed. That's going to have specificity. That's going to have transference. And that's tempo and rest period. In terms of your volumes and intensities, once again, it comes down to the athlete, comes down to their training status, their chronological age. Everything comes into it. You've got to look at their injury history, what previous injuries they've had. But normally, I mean, there's no cookie cutter approach, so I can't really tell you where to go depending on an athlete. Obviously, the higher trained individual, you're going to have a bit more higher frequency and higher volume because they are higher trained. There's a few schools of thought on that. But, I mean, anywhere between 3 to 4 sets of 2 to 6 reps for strength training, max strength, peak force is fine as long as the quality is high. You don't have to do 1,000 exercises on one muscle group to get stronger. Pick one core exercise, one bilateral and one unilateral. And the reason why we do single leg unilateral work is, in most cases, 1, to minimize bilateral deficit, 2, to decrease, a lot of guys have got muscular imbalances from previous injuries, but 3, also to increase your core lifts. Okay, so something like a split squat or a single leg squat should raise your bilateral squatting movements. That's the reason why we do it. So stick to one core exercise and just do it with really, really high quality. The amount of people that I see in gyms see with terrible quality, not thinking about the movement, no intention to move the weight quickly, no high level exertion. We use the saying intensity effort, quality movement, high level exertion. Control the negative, drive to the positive. Okay, we're looking for the perfect rep. The perfect rep is the time and distance to get from point A to point B. The rep is what stimulates change. Always remember that. And that's going to stimulate neuromuscular overload and enhance the training effect. So focus on quality, not quantity, and the perfect rep. Especially with strength, power, speed, agility, it's quality, not quantity. And yes, there is more to than 3 sets of 8 to 10. You need to vary motor recruitment. You need to vary the rep ranges to stimulate your nervous system. You are not going to stimulate your obviously, when you train, you get some sort of neurological adaptation, some sort of muscle morphology adaptation. So we call neuroadaptation and metabolic adaptation. Depending on your loading parameters will dictate which side you go more towards. So is it more neuroadaptation looking or more metabolic adaptation? If you're doing more heavy load, slow velocity training, that's more neural adaptation, that's more neural loading. You stimulate your CNS more. If you're more 8 to 12 reps, high volumes, minimal rest periods, high metabolic fatigue, high time and attention, that's more metabolic adaptation. We're looking to increase muscle hypertrophy, we're a greater EPOC response. More bodybuilding type of methods. Okay, so always remember you can't dissociate between the two, but depending on your loading parameters will dictate which side we're going to go more towards, more neural or more metabolic. Pretty much that's it today, guys. I mean, I kind of gave over the basics of it. Pretty much what I want you guys just to remember is strength is the foundation of speed, power, agility, and work capacity. Pretty much any physical quality can be improved by strength training. Strength training is a lot more efficient at decreasing body fat than any long, slow distance running, 10 kilometers, 20 kilometers at all. Okay, so if you want your body to become more efficient and your central nervous system to become more efficient, start lifting weights and start lifting for strength. Okay, stop looking at just bodybuilding. Train your body as a unit. So look at your compound lifts, your squats, your deadlifts, your bench, your rows, your overhead press, your chins. Okay, start looking at training your body as a unit, challenging your nervous system, and you get a lot more efficient. You're going to be more functional, but you're also going to feel better. Okay. Any questions, guys? Please email me, Christian@woodfordssc.com. Sorry, I went over time here, 41 minutes. I went 20 minutes over. Look, I could have gone on for the next. I mean, I literally gave you the most basic understanding of strength. I mean, I could have gone into it more detail, but I'm trying to keep it more general population and for exercise science students and for strength and conditioning coaches to understand neural adaptation and underpinnings of strength and how to develop strength and how to understand the nervous system and the muscular system. But I mean, any questions, just ask me. PM me on Facebook. I'm happy to talk about it. Other than that, guys, thanks for listening in. 5th podcast will come up in the next few weeks. If you've got any topics you want me to go over, please PM, email me. Other than that, guys, have a good week, and I'll see you soon. Live strong.